So today, I'll give a quick intro to TestRail for those of you that maybe are unfamiliar but just jumped on the webinar. But then we're going to jump into the meat of the program pretty quickly with the 7.8 release highlights, and then we'll end with a bit of Q&A. Throughout the course of the webinar, we have Adam Rue. He is one of the product managers here at TestRail, and he's going to be helping me keep Q&A in line and answer some of your questions throughout this webinar as well. I am Heather Versillo, and I'm a product marketing manager here at TestRail. So we'll be happy to get in touch with you all. If you have questions after the fact or any additional types of information or whatnot that you'd like, please get in touch with us at that contact@gurock.com. Just to give a quick intro and rundown on TestRail, it is a test management platform that boosts confidence in your entire testing process, and it easily scales with you as your business grows. Some of the ways that we help teams do this is by increasing test coverage through some robust reporting. We also help teams centralize automation testing and their manual testing. One of the big goals of TestRail is to centralize all of your testing activities within the platform so that you can easily track your test progress and activities in real time. And this really helps teams create a lot of visibility for stakeholders. Some of the ways we go about this, you're going to see in this webinar as we walk through our upcoming 7.8 features. So you can see some of the companies that we tend to work with. We have a number of great case studies on the website if you're interested in checking those out as well. And we'll move on to some product highlights. And with TestRail 7.8, this has currently been rolled out to our early access release track. TestRail uses a release tracks format to release our new versions. So early access, those folks tend to get these highlights and product features quickly and early on. And this release specifically is being rolled out over the course of the next few weeks to our users on our default track. And they'll typically receive updates about once a quarter. So that being said, the first feature we want to feature here is test parameterization. So this is now available for our enterprise cloud customers. And this is a feature that's really for anyone involved in managing test cases or test runs, like your test managers and designers of test cases. So it's a style of data-driven testing that allows you to test the same scenario multiple times while using different inputs for each test. And test parameterization is giving you really the ability to run the same test case with multiple different test values without having to duplicate that test case manually. So we accomplish test parameterization by using what are known as variables and data sets within TestRail. A variable is a reference to a single piece of data and what I referred to in the definition of test parameterization as an input. So then we have data sets, and a data set is a list of variables, and data sets allow you to have a list of corresponding data. Each project in TestRail Enterprise has a test data area, which encompasses all of your data sets that can be referenced in any test case within that project. So the big goals of test parameterization and benefits that you'll experience is that you're going to have reduced time spent on maintenance since there are fewer test cases to manage. You can write one test case that can be executed multiple times without having to clone or replicate it, and which makes it faster to design those test cases. You're going to reduce the chance of human error since a value only needs to be entered once rather than multiple times. And you'll get to leverage some of this dynamic data to ensure the accuracy as well. And finally, organization of your test cases is going to be easier with fewer test cases. So I'll show you a little bit here about parameterization, then we'll go through and do a demo as well within TestRail so you can see the process of using test parameterization within an instance. But some of the important details about test parameterization and notes is that you have test data table that's comprised of data sets and variables, and we'll see that in just a moment. This is accessible from the test cases page, and you can add, edit, and remove variables and data sets from within the test data table. You're also able to import and export these data sets and variables to CSVs. And if you happen to have blank values in the data set, it's going to grab the default column. So in this GIF here, you'll see it's column B is our default. So it's going to grab one of those default values so that it's not returning a null value to you. So some of the way that we go about looking at parameterization is that you're able to insert these variables into test cases so you can use parameterization during execution. So you'll select from a menu the parameter that you're interested for. You can insert that into a test case by starting to type the % symbol. And with the syntax, the variables are surrounded by %. And you can insert variables in a string, so test case fields, and something like environment, or text fields like the preconditions or the steps. When it comes to the general workflow of parameterization, first you want to define the data in the test data table. Then you're going to want to insert your variables into your test cases. And finally, you have two ways to generate parameterized tests. So the first is that you can add test data when you create a test run or a test plan. And the second is that you can actually create test runs or plans from the test data page. So we'll go ahead and walk through some of that now, actually. So I have my instance open here to the test cases tab. And if I want to view my test data table or create it, I'll click View Test Data in my instance here. You do need to have specific administrative privileges in order to edit this information. So that can be done through the administration area in TestRail. So you'll see my test data table here. I have it populated already with some locale information for a few different countries. But if I wanted to edit some of this information, I could easily click the edit button. Let's say I want to change our name here. And let's see, we want to, maybe we made a mistake with our zip code or whatnot, and we need to change that information as well. But you can go ahead and save those edits that you've made to your table. If you want to export this information to change it in bulk, you can click Export CSV and then make edits to that CSV and re-import. And any blank areas that you see, they would then be populated once you import that information through a CSV. That's the test data table is pretty intuitive there for use. So then we want to go to our test cases. If I'm going to create a test case and use these parameters, I have already created one test case here just to get us started. So let's say we want to add a new shipping address. And the way I would go about adding these parameters is I've already started filling out my steps here. But for step 2 in this test, I want to fill in the shipping address form with the below information. And so I want to know the name, I want to see the phone to test, I want to see the address to test, and the country to test. So in order to do this, I'm going to surround my variable there with %. So I can go ahead and start typing my phone, and you'll see as soon as you hit %, your menu options come up. You can go ahead and click that if you want, or you can go ahead and just type it in and it will actually start to filter your results. And for country, we'll just select country there. So in our test case, you can see that we expect there to be a different name depending on the data set that we're using in the table. But we're going to go ahead and choose which data sets to use when we now create our test run or a test plan. And you can see here, I've also added a parameter for the country here. So we'll go ahead and save our test case now. And then the first way we can go ahead and use this information is in the test run and results tab. We can click add a test run or a test plan if you'd like to do it that way, if you want to use multiple test runs. And we will go ahead and you'll see there's this data set option now. So we'll go ahead and say we want to just use the default data set. And you can include all test cases. You can select a specific test case or use dynamic filtering like you can for any other test run. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just select this one test case here that I have the parameters in so we can see this operate. And we'll now add a test run. All right, so now that we've created the test run, the default country that I selected was the United States. So we're going to see in our test that information is automatically pulled in now. So we have my name, phone number, address, and country here. But the other way we can go ahead and create our test runs from this data is if we go back to test cases, we can view our test data. And we can create test runs from this screen as well. So we'll go ahead and create test runs. And let's say now we want to create test runs for all of our data sets there. So we can create one test plan that has these 3 new test runs, and there's a couple of other options. We can just create 3 new test runs. We can choose to add these new test runs to an existing test plan. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new test plan containing these 3 test runs. So I'll just go ahead and name my test plan here. We could add it to a milestone, references, etc., as we'd like. And you'll now see that we have these 3 test runs added to our test plan. First one is for that default dataset section. Second one is for the Portugal locale dataset and England local dataset. So I can go ahead and add this test plan now. And we can see information here. And you can go ahead and add your test cases as desired from that point. So that gives us the basics of our test parameterization. So we're going to head back over to our presentation here now. And we're going to move on to the next set of improvements that are coming up in TestRail 7.8. We've made some Jira integration improvements here. So our Jira users working in TestRail don't need to leave their workflow now inside of the tool in order to edit Jira issues. So this allows them to save some time, simplify your workflows into a single tool. And our users in Jira, they can see all their TestRail data associated with a bug or a requirement. So it also simplifies some of their workflow to a single tool as well. And it provides contextual information to TestRail users or your team, maybe devs that aren't in TestRail all of the time. So from within TestRail, you're able to make changes to link Jira issues, link milestones and plans to requirements now using references. That wasn't something we could do before. And you can edit a Jira issue status when you're pushing a defect from TestRail to Jira. And then from within Jira, you're now able to view those linked TestRail milestones and test plans. And you're going to be able to display test results from the linked milestones, plans, and runs in your Jira issues. Some of the improvements we've made that resulted in a little bit faster Jira load times as well. And then at the bottom of this screen here, you're going to be able to see the integration options just with the TestRail Jira add-on. So the new field should show tabs with the information referenced in TestRail. So before you could see results, test cases, runs, but now you can also see plans and milestones. So it includes all results, test cases, runs, plans, and milestones now. The default behavior in Jira is that when an issue is open, it won't automatically show all of the information for the sake of improving performance. So there will be a show button that you'll click to see this information. And if you hover over a reference field in TestRail, you can see the Jira information, and which previously you would have needed to navigate to Jira, but now you get to stay in TestRail. So this is a really great workflow improvement we're seeing so that testers can streamline their process a bit and just stay within one tool rather than having to navigate outside. And next on our list is behavior-driven development. So we've added a feature here, but I'm going to explain behavior-driven development just a touch so that we're all on the same page here. But it's an agile process that encourages collaboration between devs, QA, business users through use of a common language that can move across technical and business sides of an organization pretty easily. So BDD is a way to describe how a certain feature and functionality should work in a given scenario is what we typically call it. And it's often characterized by the Gherkin syntax, which means we're using words like given, when, then, scenario in our test cases. So BDD scenarios, they can be used to define product requirements and test cases, and they can be used to run manual tests or integrate with test automation tools, something like Cucumber or SpecFlow is what we typically see. So within TestRail, we are going to be introducing a new behavior-driven development test case template. So users are going to be able to define BDD scenarios in place of test steps now. So you'll be able to also export BDD test cases from TestRail directly into feature files. And those BDD test cases can also be imported to TestRail via feature files. So we have created 2 new API endpoints that are available for the export and import of feature files as well. We've made some significant improvements to charts that you're going to see too, and with the introduction of TestRail 7.8. The first one is with the property distribution reports for cases and results. You are now going to be able to stack some of this information. But for anyone who's not familiar, the property distribution cases report, it allows you to group your test in your repository by any test case field. So this report can help you quickly summarize test cases grouped by your specified properties. And you'll want to use this report to see something like how many test cases you have for each category in the field, maybe priority, automation type, creator, or other attributes. Whereas the property distribution results report, it will show you a summary of the tests grouped by a selectable attribute for a given project or milestone or specific test run. And as the name implies on this one, this report distributes tests based on their properties or the attributes selected. So for instance, you can group your tests by status. And in this type of case, the report will show you different status categories and the tests that fall under each category. So this is a really great addition for our test leads and managers who want the ability to generate a bit more detailed reports here. The next big charting improvement we've made we are customizing charts now on the dashboard and project overview pages. I think many of you will find that you are going to enjoy being able to view and refine data across multiple projects using either 1 or 2 dimension data. Oh, excuse me. The view for customizable charts on the dashboard and the project, that is only viewable for each individual user. So you could have 5 different testers that want to see different pieces of information on the dashboard and project overview pages, and they can now each set their own view as desired. So this is going to help testers, test leads, managers quickly find and analyze some of their data a bit more quickly. And I'm going to, this is one that I wanted to share as well because it's a relatively significant improvement to TestRail. So if we come into TestRail on our dashboard overview page here, we can see that we have a number of different projects. We scroll down here, various projects. And when you now first log into TestRail, once you receive TestRail 7.8 in your instance, you will come to see you have a line graph here that's showing just the general activity that's happened with your projects. So, but we can go ahead and refine this information so that we can see just the projects that we're specifically interested in. So let's say I'm only interested in my Android, iOS web app. So we can get rid of the Windows and Mac OS app. Or if we want to add something back on, we can go ahead and select that as well. But we'll stick to these three for now. And let's say rather than seeing activity related to the number of results that have been entered, we want to see defects. So our chart will render here, and we'll now start to see number of defects found within each of these projects. Where this gets a little bit more exciting and I think useful for a lot of our teams is you can use this chart selector icon, and you can select either line chart like we see here, which allows you to select one attribute of data like results or defects like we just saw. You can also see horizontal bars for these. So now, right now we're seeing defects as just in a horizontal bar rather than a line graph. And if you want to start to see, you can use stack bars or group bars as well. But first, let's actually select a second attribute. And I need to actually switch this first to our stacked bars. So it automatically added a second attribute down here for us. But let's say we want to see something about results. We want to see our test with results, and we want to see by status of those results. You can also select your date range here as desired. So we have some easy to select options, but then you can use a calendar picker if you wish to. We'll go back here, and now we can see that the number of tests we've had passed, blocked, retested, failed total, and you can hover over any of this information to see it associated with these individual projects. So let's say we're working on our iOS app and we have these blocked tests. I'm going to click on this and it will drill down. So we're seeing the associated tests that have the status of blocked. So I can maybe see a little bit more information. And then if I want to drill in a little bit deeper onto one of these, I can expand this, see if there's any additional information. So then we can head back up, and just as another example, let's see here. Maybe we want to see tests that have defects, and we want to see them by something like milestone. So we can select that as well. But then maybe we don't need to see all of these milestones exactly. Maybe while we're working through one of them, we want to just select a specific release number. So we can say maybe we only want release 1.1. And the second one we might want is maybe we're going to look at 1.1 across a couple of these. And we're seeing the only thing that is coming up when we search for our specific release number here is associated with our web app. So we know that we need to work through a little bit more on the Android and iOS to meet our deadlines. So this is how you would go about using the customizable chart on the dashboard and project overview. Once you do get to an individual project, you will only see the information for that specific project. You do need to come back to the dashboard to do your cross-project reporting here. And if you are interested in exporting this, you can download this as an image. So you have your options here, or CSV or XLS file. You can also copy this to your clipboard if you want. If you did a lot of customization here, you want to completely reset it, we have this reset button that takes you back to all projects line chart, and you can start from scratch again as you please. All right, so we're going to keep moving on now. With customizable charts, we've also added the ability to ignore test results in reporting. This was something we've had a few requests for because we've had test leads that want to ignore tests that are no longer applicable after maybe the scope of testing has changed. Or you might have a test manager that wants to ignore test cases or tests for cases that are not yet ready for testing. So you can now mark certain test statuses to be ignored in your charts and dashboards, and only data and information relevant then to your current situation will be included in your metrics. So the way you're going to see this is we just used a status name of NA. You can call the status what you'd like, but for these tests we've marked NA with the status. This status is one we've decided will be ignored, so it is not going to be displayed in our test run information or other areas of TestRail. Next, this is a smaller improvement, but very exciting still, is that we have improved the search for TestRail. So there's a much more intuitive and modern search interface now that gives you an option of a variety of stackable filters, and there's search prediction as well based on relevance scores. So you actually have the ability to search across projects as well. And you can do that directly from the dashboard page. So you have the ability to search for more than one keyword at a time too. These stackable filters, they're going to give you the ability to add multiple pieces of criteria to search against with looking for these specific keywords. You also will be able to see any recent search history so that you have quick access to some of your previous search results. Like I mentioned, predictive text is going to help prevent inaccuracies, typos in your search query. And as you can see, it's just a more modern and intuitive interface. In addition to some of these great features, we've also made a few database optimization improvements. This is nothing that you're going to see on the front end, but we're reducing some of these CPUs utilization to optimize some of our index table, which means that there's going to be some significant performance gains for our data heavy TestRail transactions. So this will be mostly noticeable by the larger customers that have more data. So when you're loading a page with tens or thousands of test cases, you'll notice some improvements. Or if you're loading milestones page that has a large number of test runs and test plans. And finally, we are also implementing strong passwords by default. So there's nothing that you need to do. Just the next time you're required to change your password, this will be implemented and required for you. So we're going to require at least 8 characters and lower and uppercase numbers and special characters. And it's a more secure account creation and onboarding experience for everyone as well. There are not going to be passwords and emails, so we will not have access to those. And then there's just an improved password creation and validation UX there, as you can see. So not exactly feature related, but we are starting to have release notes in our documentation. So if you are familiar with going to the TestRail documentation, you will now find a release notes section where you can find a summary of the features and improvements with each release. We've started just populating that with the most recent releases, and as we move forward, we'll keep adding to it. If you are looking for documentation specific to some of these features, I'm including that on the slide deck so that you'll have some easy access. And then finally, I think we are ready for some Q&A here. So I know Adam's been trying to keep up with some of these, and let me take a look at what we have option-wise and take a drink of water here since I've been talking for quite a bit now. All right, so we have one here. Could it be possible to create test data for each test case, or all test cases share the same test data? So the goal of test parameterization is that you only have to write one test case. So you will have one test case that shares the test data information. Let me see if I can get back to my example here. All right, let's see. So test cases here. We ended up creating, let's go back to our test runs and results. So I created this test plan locale. And we have test runs. So these each would use that one test case I created for shipping addresses and seeing that on the new form. And I've used that same test case to create that test within each of these test runs. But within the test run, I needed to either tell the test run which data set I wanted to use, such as the England information, the Portugal location, or the default, which was the United States information. So it is using the same test case, and it's just creating a test, one test for each of these test runs, and a different data set is used within each of these. And hopefully that answered your question a little bit better. When are those changes going to be implemented into TestRail? I do not yet have a view test button data. Thank you. So this is going to depend a bit on the release track your organization has subscribed to. So if you don't see it yet, that indicates to me that your organization is currently on the default or deferred release tracks. Like I alluded to in the beginning of this webinar, we have 3 release tracks. So early access users will receive features and improvements as they are ready to be released throughout a quarter. The default release track means that those instances will receive the features and improvements approximately once a quarter. And then the deferred track, they will receive the updates and features approximately 3 months or 1 quarter-ish after the default track users. So mostly you're currently on the default or deferred track if you don't see that yet. Or keep in mind, test parameterization is an enterprise feature. So if you're interested in changing release tracks, I will find that form. Let me see, actually, I should be able to find that really quick and throw that in the chat for us quickly here. Okay, I'm not going to take too much time doing that right now. It's not coming up for me quickly. But that's why you might not see the view test data button yet. Okay, and then for cloud users, when will 7.8 be available for use? So like I mentioned, it is available for use currently for the early access release track users. For default release track users, it is planning to be rolled out within the coming weeks. So next few weeks, most likely by the end of the year. So we have a question about why does the number of test cases show 227 instead of 1 that was selected for the test plan view? Let's see. So within these, I need to go in and edit this test run to select the test cases that I wanted. Okay, here's a Jira question that we have. Is there any possible way that a user without a TestRail account can view at least the summary of the test case if they don't have access to them on Jira? This will help showcase a stakeholder what failed in a ticket in Jira. So at this point, that's not possible. You do need a TestRail license to see that information with Jira at this moment in time. And then we have our default track users skipping 7.6 and 7.7 versions. So because we have the release tracks, some of those earlier version numbers are used when these features are released to the early access release track. So for example, 7.6, that maybe included one or two of these features to the release track, while the next might have included just a couple more, but there was also a 7.8 that included some of these features, not all, to the early access release track. But we now are using a 7.8 with a .0 build with a different build number, and this is going to be released to early access and default users. I hope that answers your question a bit there. All right. Oh, here, test parameterization question. Can the test data parameterization be used across multiple projects? So test parameter, let's go back over here to our view test data table. So this table is only applicable to this project. So in my case, I've called this project Great Lakes Software, since I live in Ohio, which is on one of the Great Lakes in the United States. But yeah, this table is only available to this project at this moment in time. All right, there will be updates in the app for Jira, so only accounts integrated with TestRail can see the integrated information. Yes, that's correct. And then we've had someone ask if you can provide a link to the 7.8 release notes. Adam or Reagan, is that something you can grab and put in the chat when you have a moment here?
I'm working on it right now.
Beautiful, thank you. Someone asked about a migration from Jira to TestRail. I'm not quite sure if you're referring to just migrating your cases from Jira to TestRail, or if you're referring to being able to see your Jira information within TestRail. If you could jump back into the Q&A and put some of that information back in there, that would be helpful. And then someone asked if these features are available in Professional. So many of these features are available in Professional. So if we head back through here, strong passwords is Professional and Enterprise, database optimization, improve search, that's also Professional and Enterprise, ignoring test results, Enterprise and Professional. Customizable charts, this is Professional and Enterprise as well. Same with the property distribution report stacking. BDD is also for Professional and Enterprise. The Jira integration is the same. Let's go. And so really test parameterization, that is the only feature with this release that is applicable only to Enterprise. So I hope that helps explain who will be able to get access to this information. And bear with me while I read through the questions here. Let's see. Is there an about TestRail somewhere which shows what version and track you are on? Let's see. Yes, there is. So if you go into your TestRail instance, help and feedback up here at the upper right, about TestRail, this is one way. So I can see that here I am on 7.8.0, the early access release track, and that's my build number. So with test case parameterization, how can we have two or more test cases with different test data sets within the same project? So you're not going to have two or more test cases. You will have two or more tests. So we have, let me pull this back up here. So we have our test case repository here, right? And in our test case repository, we have this one test case to successfully add a new shipping address. However, I have used this test case, this one test case, in a couple of different test runs. Which that then creates the 2 or more tests, not test cases though, with different data sets. So I have this test run I've created, I think last month sometime, and I populated it with that one test case. And I chose here when I created this test run to use the Portugal data set. So it's being populated with information from the Portugal data set. And I then created a different test run. So let's see, I think this was one as well. And this test run has another test that is using the default or United States data set. So you will need to create 2 or more tests, not test cases, in your test runs. So each test run will use a different data set. I hope that explains it a little clearer. But just to reinforce data sets when you're in here, so a column is the data set. So when I mentioned I was using the Portugal data set, that's this information here. When I was using the default or United States data set, that was column B here. Any plans to integrate TestRail reports into Jira dashboards? I don't know of any plans currently, but if that's something you're really interested in seeing, I would suggest emailing contact@grurock.com, kind of let them know what specifically you would be interested in knowing and learning the types of information you want to see there. And that will make it to Adam's team, the product team, and they'll add that to our feature requests. Just a general question here. Looks like, can we link test automation tool results to TestRail? Yes, you can. That is one of the key benefits of TestRail and reasons why people like to use TestRail is that they can centralize all of their testing activities in one place, whether it's manual testing or automation testing. So we can integrate with dozens of different issue requirement trackers and automation tools. And if you dig through documentation, you'll find more information about that. If there's something specific that you're looking for, you can get in touch with contact@grurock.com and they can give you a bit more information as well. And then someone here mentioned, I came late to the game. Did you cover Gherkin in TestRail? So we did go through that kind of quickly. There is a new BDD template that's available in TestRail, and you will use Gherkin syntax for that. So you can see the screenshot quickly here. This first slide gives a bit of background info about BDD, which I'm guessing you probably are familiar with. So, but you'll have the ability to import and export feature files, as well as do that from within TestRail with your BDD test cases. Can the test data support data from a JSON field? So right now, the way to populate the test data table is using a CSV file. So it is limited to that right now. When can we expect to see similar TestRail integration with Azure DevOps? So that's something I don't have an answer for you right now, unfortunately. But like I had mentioned with our other attendee, if there are features that you're interested in, we are always interested in knowing what you want because we are, I think as you can see, we're constantly working to improve and add to TestRail. So if an integration with Azure DevOps, a similar one, is something you would like, if you could give us more information and details about what you're looking for, that's incredibly helpful so that we know the direction to start looking at and talking to people to get a sense of what would be helpful. Let's see, there were a couple Azure DevOps questions here, so I was looking through those. And then any plans looking for reports that they could integrate from TestRail to Jira. We don't have anything in the near future, but I have heard that request before. So if you want to provide us more information specifically on if there are specific TestRail reports you're looking for or just specific pieces of information, that would be helpful to know. All right, let's see. Is it, I'm looking here. As far as migrations, I see a couple of different questions about migrations. We are actually in the process of creating migration guides from various tools. So that's something that might hopefully help you moving forward. Let me see if I can find that link real quick here. Okay, let me grab the chat now. So some of you, it looks like these will help with the questions that you have. Other people, I know you're asking about specific tools to migrate from that we don't have migration guides for just yet, but our solutions architect, Diogo, he is actively working on some of those. So I hope that's helpful. Would it be possible to demo us a feature file import feature? I don't actually have any feature files prepared at this moment, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that. However, in the documentation, you'll see some screenshots of that. So hopefully that will help you understand and visualize a little bit more what you'd be looking at there. Someone's asking if they can create their own drop downs in the UI. So I'm not sure if, you can add custom fields to test cases. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you are asking for. Let's see, if we add a new test case here. So these are customizable. You can add, actually, I think it's this instance that I have some more of those in. Let's see. You can add custom fields to test cases, and you can decide if that's a single string of text or if that's a drop down or some of your other options there. I think that might be helpful for you. Do we need any specific add-ons for integrating automation tool tracking with TestRail? To integrate automations or automated tests, you don't necessarily need any specific add-ons. The way our users will often integrate is through the API or webhooks is the other option, or the TestRail CLI. So someone asked here too, is it possible to change the sequence or order of the test cases execution within a plan? Today's cases are sorted according to their IDs. So at this point, I don't believe so. I know I've heard that request in the past, though. All right, and I know we are about at time now. So I'm actually going to, I think, call it quits on this at this point. But this recording will be available, so you're more than welcome to go back and look at some of the information. We'll have this slide deck sent out as well. So there's links to the documentation. If you are interested in starting a free trial or just want to start a trial so you have a little bit of a sandbox environment for a couple of weeks, feel free to, if you want to mess around with some of these. We're always adding to the blog as well. The community is also available for additional questions that you might have. So I hope that this has been informative and helpful in understanding the features that are coming down the pike for TestRail 7.8. And thank you very much for joining me today.